Hello and welcome to episode 142 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. Back in August, I had my wife Courtney on the show to talk about our 2018 vacation to Walt Disney World from our then home in Arizona to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary. Well, we made it less than halfway through the week before we ran out of time, so we're going to finish with that conversation in today's episode. That episode from August 24th, which was our 10th wedding anniversary, was the first episode of the podcast to reach 10,000 views on YouTube. Courtney and I were blown away by how popular the show was to our listeners. If you catch this show on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help. Let's get right back into it. Courtney, thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me again, Rick. I really enjoyed reminiscing about the first half of our vacation, so I'm excited to keep talking about the next half.
Yeah, so way back on August 24th, Courtney and I started the first half of our conversation about our 5-year anniversary trip to Walt Disney World. We still lived in Arizona at the time, and we made it through our first 2 park days, but that was all we could do, and we had a full episode. So since I had some other things planned for the rest of September, here we are in October, wrapping up our conversation about that vacation, but we started things off in Disney's Animal Kingdom. Then we went over on that first day to Magic Kingdom. Courtney got to see Cinderella Castle for the very first time. The Dapper Dans were performing on Main Street right when we got there. We rode iconic rides like Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, The People Mover, It's a Small World. We had a really great first day, capped off by a performance of Happily Ever After. The next day, we spent bouncing back and forth between Epcot and Disney's Hollywood Studios. But remember, this was back in 2018. It was for our 5-year anniversary. We've now been married for 10 years. So Disney's Hollywood Studios was pretty much a big construction site getting ready for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So there wasn't a whole lot to do there. But obviously, Epcot is our favorite park, and that was the start of it becoming our favorite park. But Wednesday was almost a full day at Magic Kingdom. We knew we had to dedicate an entire day to Magic Kingdom. We had a dining reservation, and of course, this was back in the days of FastPass Plus. So if I remember correctly, our Fast Passes for the day that we had pre-scheduled were Splash Mountain. I had Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, while Courtney had a meet and greet with Ariel. And then we had Seven Dwarfs Mine Train scheduled right after the Festival of Fantasy Parade. But the way we started the day was with a character dining meal, a breakfast at Crystal Palace. I remember when I was a kid seeing the people who had these dining reservations that got to get into the park and go to different parts of the park earlier than everybody else. That felt like such a big deal. We never did character dining when I was a kid. This was special. This was something I really, really enjoyed. Of course, Crystal Palace is the characters from the 100 Acre Woods, Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, and Eeyore. Some of the most photogenic characters, some of the cutest characters in all of Disney's repertoire. The breakfast was good. You got those iconic Mickey waffles bright and early in the morning. Got some eggs, got some substantial food so that we could get things going. How did you enjoy Crystal Palace?
I really liked it. I thought the food was pretty good, but really the thing was the overall experience. So I agree with you, kind of feeling like a VIP. And then the character interactions were just fantastic. Of course, like you said, they're so cute. They're so photogenic. They give the best hugs. And it was, something I will always, always remember.
And we did something absolutely ludicrous, and that was we made 2 breakfast reservations because we really wanted to get the gray stuff cupcake at Be Our Guest. This was back when Be Our Guest was still quick service during the day, and at night it turned into a table service restaurant. So we had a breakfast reservation a little later. In the gap, we went to Princess Fairy Tale Hall and met Princesses Tiana and Rapunzel, and then headed over to Be Our Guest to try the gray stuff cupcake. Was the experience of getting to see Beast Castle and try the gray stuff and enjoy that theming. This was when it was tough to get that dining reservation. It was not easy back in 2018 to get into Be Our Guest. Did you enjoy that atmosphere?
Yes, very much so. Being a big Beauty and the Beast fan, I was super excited to see it. It felt very immersive. Again, I think we felt a little bit like special, kind of VIP. We just soaked in all of the details and the theming, and it felt fantastic.
Then we headed over to Liberty Square and we got to catch, oh my goodness, this is something Disney needs to bring back so desperately. When they had the Muppet Show going through great moments in American history, and it was in Liberty Square, and the show was so funny, and they had a couple different versions of it, and you could see it throughout the day. Disney needs to bring this back to Liberty Square. It's perfect. I know Courtney then wanted to see the Hall of Presidents. She had never done that attraction before. 40-some animatronics. It's very impressive. I did not do it because back in 2018, I think people pretty much know some of my opinions on things by this point. Didn't feel like doing Hall of Presidents back in 2018. So I did Aladdin's Flying Carpets. And then Courtney and I met back up for the Festival of Fantasy Parade. I know both of us had watched videos of this parade over and over and over again as we were getting ready for this vacation. I talked about in the last episode back in 2018, I used to run 11 miles a day. And the day before our flight left, I was on the treadmill in the gym at our apartment complex, and I was just bringing up Festival of Fantasy Parade, Happily Ever After fireworks while I was running 11 miles getting ready for this vacation. So we got to see Festival of Fantasy, but it was hot. I know a lot of people know when you wait for 35, 40 minutes for this parade, it can get really, really hot. And that was when Mickey's PhilharMagic was a lifesaver. We had a FastPass Plus for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, but Courtney was not feeling right at the moment because of how that heat was affecting her. And we just got to dip in for that 20-minute show, and it really made all the difference.
PhilharMagic sometimes is something that I'm not sure that I want to spend my time doing. Although it's cute, it's fun, it's, all of the great classic Disney music and songs that you love. But yes, sometimes you need that air conditioning and to sit down. And even if you don't think you are very much into the attraction, it's worth it. And of course, once you're sitting there and doing the attraction, usually you really appreciate it and you're having fun. So the air conditioning and getting to sit was very much appreciated.
And then that was our first time on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. This was when that was such a hard fast pass to get. It still gets lines of 90 minutes to 2 hours on a regular basis, still to this day. How much did you enjoy that ride? Because I know it was one, you love Snow White. I know it was a ride that you were looking forward to experiencing.
I loved it. I know it's a little short, but for me personally, I had enough of a thrill and I was glad that it was just as long or as short as it was. And just enough Snow White theming. I wish maybe there was a tiny bit more, but the dwarves are cute and everything is great. And to me, it's a great ride.
And that day, of course, we did Splash Mountain. It's actually the only time I've ever ridden Splash Mountain. I think it's the same for you as well. but we are both so excited for Tiana's Bayou Adventure coming now. I know that I was never a fan of drops in the past, and this drop wasn't all that bad. I'm excited for Tiana's. I will ride it once we get to that point. Why don't you just take a little bit of a curve away from the vacation, talk a little bit about Tiana's coming.
Well, much like you, I really don't like drop rides either, and kind of the log flume ride is not my thing. But I am getting very excited to see how they're going to do Tiana's Bayou Ride, because it's a great movie. It's kind of underrepresented, and it's just making me very excited to see what Disney continues to do with their Imagineering.
And I also had a FastPass Plus for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. This was the first time I got the chance to ride my favorite ride again on the vacation, almost halfway through the vacation before I got to ride it for the first time. But Courtney had heard those stories about kidney stones and all that kind of stuff, so she didn't know if it was going to be maybe a little too intense for her. She still has only done it, I think, twice. The Walt Disney World version she's done twice. She's done the version at Disneyland a few more times. So we got to experience all of that, but there was a funny quirk in the scheduling because the Food and Wine Festival at Epcot has the Eat to the Beat concert series. And one of my Mount Rushmore favorite bands, and one of my 4 favorite musical artists of all time, is the band Everclear from back in the 90s. And they played at Epcot on Wednesday night. So Courtney and I actually took the monorail over to Epcot and got the chance to check out Everclear in World Showcase with Spaceship Earth in the background. It was really quite a cool experience, and to think about it, just a little over a year later, I saw Everclear again at the Eat to the Beat concert series in Epcot, and that was the day I met Jillian, who a lot of you have heard on the show before. We have done some of those after hours events together, and she's done reviews of those on the show. It feels like 2 completely different segments of my life, 2 different times in my life, my Arizona life and my Florida/Disney life. But they weren't separated by all that much. And it was fun to get that chance to see the band play in such an unusual location. Then we stopped and got some treats at the bakery in France. And then Courtney, because it was starting to get to her, like we had 3 full park days, and the on-property extra magic hours were back at Magic Kingdom, and I wanted to take advantage of all of those because we were staying on property. So Courtney actually went back to the hotel, she got some rest, and I headed back to Magic Kingdom. I rode Big Thunder Mountain Railroad again at night. This was the first time I ever did Big Thunder, where I was going up the hill and the fireworks for Happily Ever After were going off in the distance. That was so cool. First time I ever experienced that. I ran around and did some other rides. I think I did It's a Small World again. I did a few more things. And then it was back to the hotel for me. But the great thing about Thursday was this was sort of our off day. We had scheduled an off day, but then we ruined all of our good planning by buying tickets to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party on Thursday night. At least, however, I was able to wake up at like 10 o'clock in the morning and run my 7 miles, so I didn't have to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning like I had been the other days. This was a time that we sort of got to regenerate, revive ourselves a little bit. And then we had lunch at Captain Cook's at Disney's Polynesian Resort. I talk a lot about when I was a kid and I was going to Disney and some of these things felt out of reach. And just to be walking around the Polynesian, like that was something we never did. I think we might have felt uncomfortable when I was a kid, being around all the frou-frou rich people. We walked around the Poly. It was the very first time I got to bore you with the story about how the Beatles were officially broken up at the Polynesian. And then we stopped at Captain Cook's, and Captain Cook's ended up being one of my favorite meals of the vacation because it was the biggest surprise. It was the quick service that I was most surprised I really, really liked. I got the noodles and tofu, and it was really good. It was something substantial before we got all of the candy and all of the sweets at Not So Scary.
So yeah, I definitely remember us going there and then Not So Scary. I want you to kind of introduce us, make the introduction to this. But I think definitely if you're a Disney fan, first of all, you may have already done a Not So Scary party. And if you haven't, you must. It's one of the absolutely most fun things in the world, getting to have the experiences that are unique to the party, as well as riding a lot of rides and feeling like you kind of have the park to yourself. Now, it's not completely empty, but on top of it, the Halloween theming, seeing people's costumes, getting some special treats and trick-or-treating, meeting some special characters, it was an absolute blast.
So I think Courtney has a little bit of vacation goggles on here because it was crowded at Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. It wasn't as crowded as it was during the day, but these events have been getting more and more crowded throughout the years. I will say, I think Courtney is 100% correct when she says, if you have never done this, this is a must-do for Disney fans. However, we went in 2018 as part of our vacation. I went in 2019 as an annual pass holder just by myself. I went and did a Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. Then in 2020, obviously the event was canceled due to the pandemic. In 2021, Jillian, who I mentioned earlier, and I went to the Boo Bash, which was sort of the pandemic altered version of Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party that they did in 2021. And then last year, Courtney and I went to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party with Jillian. And I know a lot of you know Marissa, my regular co-host. Her cousin Natalie also went to Not So Scary with us last year. And this year I felt I just didn't need to do it again. I felt like I had had all of those experiences and they aren't bringing enough new stuff into the party. I understand why they're not doing it. It's that delicate balancing act. When people go home from a vacation and say, I went to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party and I did this and I saw the Boo to You parade and I saw the Sanderson sisters show and I did this and I did this. They're telling that to their friends and their friends want to go the next year and have that same experience. So I understand why it doesn't change all that much, but I haven't really felt the need to keep going back, especially this year. Now, we did have a heck of a good time, and I know that Hocus Pocus was a particular focus. I guess I'll just try to rhyme everything for you because that was a movie that you really liked. It was one of those cult things that you enjoyed, and you wanted to see that villain spectacular show, and we got to catch the midnight showing of it. So what did you think about it? And when you went back again and saw it in 2022, how did you feel it compared in your mind?
I think it's a great show, and I think that it lived up to the hype, and it was just as good seeing it in 2022 than in 2018. You get to see a lot of villains that you don't normally see. The storyline is pretty fun, getting a bunch of villains together with the Sanderson sisters, helping them wreak havoc and put a spell on the crowd. You get some fun songs and good, dancing and really putting on a show. And yes, it's solid, it's fun, and I really like that they have the Sanderson sisters in there.
I had mentioned earlier that I was used to, when I was a kid, going to Walt Disney World and it being so crowded because it was the busy season. And I had thought that Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party was going to be another chance for us to make sure that we got in all the rides. But we had really accomplished basically everything that we wanted to accomplish by the time we got to Thursday night. So we did ride Winnie the Pooh when it had a 5-minute wait, and we rode the Little Mermaid ride when it had a 5-minute wait. But we ended up spending a lot more of the party focused on meeting characters than I even remember. Like, as I'm looking over the pictures of the event, I didn't remember that we spent this much time meeting characters. We met Moana, which was a very rare meet and greet at the time. We met Genie and Jasmine in Adventureland. We met Alice with the Mad Hatter. And we met Minnie and Daisy in their special Halloween outfits. We did a lot of meet and greets. We went around the park and collected candy. That was a big thing for us. We wanted to get a lot of candy. Remember, I was running like 7 miles every morning. I needed to load up on sugar. I was burning all these calories for something, right? I know we stopped in at the Mickey's PhilharMagic building where they were playing The Wind in the Willows, which of course is the movie that introduced us all to Mr. Toad, who is one of my favorite characters. So I think we actually enjoyed the party more as a party than I was expecting.
It can be a little bit crowded. It can feel maybe like you don't have enough time to do everything. So the only thing I would say is I would just recommend planning it out a little bit. So what are the things that are most important to you? Because you can't do it all. It is a lot. It's great. But you can at least catch the parade one time and a show one time and those sort of things. So the way we have done it, we have definitely enjoyed it. And just the atmosphere in general is fun.
So we ended up getting back to the hotel at about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think this was when Courtney decided that she was going to sleep in a little bit on Friday. She couldn't sleep in too late, though, because we had that ever so elusive 2018 FastPass Plus of Avatar Flight of Passage. We were so excited that we made this FastPass Plus for the last day of the vacation. So we sort of had something to look forward to the entire time because people just kept telling us, you have to ride Flight of Passage. You have to ride Flight of Passage. It's so good. It's so good. And we knew we wanted to do it. We knew we wanted to experience it. So it was nice to have that sort of as this carrot at the end of the vacation. But while Courtney slept in a little bit, I did not because I wanted to get the most out of my last park day. I rope dropped again. I did Kilimanjaro Safari right away, and then I headed right back over to Expedition Everest. I met Doug and Russell from the movie Up. I was excited about that meet and greet. That was the first one that I basically did by myself. And I felt like I was really having a fun time. I did It's Tough to Be a Bug. I ran around and did a bunch of the things that I didn't know if Courtney would really need to do either again or if she would really care about them all that much in the first place. But then we rode Avatar Flight of Passage. What can you remember as your first thoughts about that ride?
So since we had the FastPass, we weren't going through the entire queue, but I do remember the parts of the queue that we went through. And again, immersive, a ton of theming, a ton of details that really builds up your excitement for the ride. And of course, everyone talks about this ride as being, so special. It was the technology, the latest technology of the time, the thing to do, the most new, fascinating ride. And I have to say, it did live up to the hype. And it is one where you're worried, will I feel too dizzy or sick or those kind of things? And it varies for each person. But I remember enjoying it, being very beautiful and very, aesthetically pleasing. And it was really a fun time.
I thought it was awesome. A lot of times, some of these thrilling things, especially if they simulate drops, I've talked about it a lot. I don't like drops. So I was a little nervous about how I would like it, but everything was thrilling without being at all uncomfortable for me. I know some people do say that they get like seasick on it or nauseous. I did not at all. But right after we got off it, I did want to eat something right away because I didn't feel nauseous, but I did feel a little light in my stomach. So that's when we got another great quick service surprise. And we walked over to Satuli Canteen. in Pandora, the world of Avatar. And I've said it before and I stand by it. The best quick service location in all of Walt Disney World. How much of a surprise was that for you?
It definitely was. Yeah, it was a lot better than I thought. They have a lot of choices, and the choices that they have come together to actually be tasty food and, somewhat maybe unique. I actually remember the dessert. We really loved the dessert, and we were pixie dusted with it for our anniversary because we were wearing some celebrating our wedding anniversary buttons at that point. And one of the lovely cast members was kind enough to pixie dust that blueberry lemon dessert, which we always remember and always love.
And then we got another great surprise. I mean, people had told us that the Festival of the Lion King show was good, but we didn't know how good. We went thinking this will be something really fun that we'll get to experience. We'll get to get in the air conditioning. Animal Kingdom is a hot park. But I was blown away by this. I'm not a musicals guy. I'm not even really a big fan of the movie The Lion King. But Festival of the Lion King blew me away with how talented the performers are. Not just the singers, who are obviously amazing, but the acrobats, the dancers. This show was Broadway quality, and we just had a fast pass for it.
I absolutely agree with you with the talent of the performers, and then, the props and the costumes and how colorful it is. I'm also not the biggest fan of The Lion King, but those songs, you love those songs, and they put it together in just a great way.
But it was at that point that we decided we were going to head back over to Epcot because we wanted to try more of those food and wine festival booths. We sort of focused a little bit more on World Showcase and sampling some of those food items more than we did on Tuesday when it was more about meeting characters and riding rides. Over the past few years, now that we live here, we go to Food and Wine Festival way more frequently, and I think I would even have to say it is my fourth favorite of the Epcot festivals. It's my least favorite of them. But when you're on vacation, this is something special. You have these little tiny food items that you can try at different booths. So we went to the Ireland booth and got that chocolate pudding cake that's really, really good. It's very hot on the inside. Just be careful about that. One of my favorite memories of the whole vacation was right before closing, I picked up an ice cream cone in France and just ate the ice cream cone as we walked to the front of the park. So from the very back of the park to the front, I just enjoyed this ice cream while sort of saying goodbye to Walt Disney World. I thought for years, it turned out it was about 5 or 6 months, I think, before I was back.
We just had no idea.
But it was one of those memories that I really, really will cherish because it just felt like you had accomplished something with your vacation. And no matter how much you enjoy a vacation, whether it be 2018 when we went to Walt Disney World, in 2021, Courtney and I met up with Sarah Says, my other co-host, and we went to Disneyland. Last year, I went to Ireland, my favorite place in the world. No matter how much you love a vacation, that last night, you're thinking about your own bed. You're thinking about sitting on the couch and watching television and getting off your feet. And one of the ways that you really accomplished a lot on a vacation and you really made the most of your time is if you kind of are looking forward to getting back home, because that means you did everything. There's nothing on the table that you're like, I didn't get the chance to do this, and it ruined my vacation because I didn't get to do it. So that's what I'll remember of those last few minutes walking through Epcot. So Courtney, now looking back at that week, your first really big experience with Walt Disney World, your first day at Magic Kingdom, your first day at Epcot, your first day at Animal Kingdom. You had been to Hollywood Studios before, but Now that you have spent like 4 years experiencing those parks as a regular, when you look back at the first times, what are some of those emotions that come up in you? Like, that is definitely what turned you from a fan of the Disney movies into being a fan of the Disney parks. I had always gone to the parks when I was a kid and didn't necessarily watch as many of the movies, so I was always more of a parks fan. And I think you were a movies fan who fell in love with the parks on this vacation. And now thinking about all the experiences you've had there since, what are your overall memories of that first trip?
So now that I'm thinking about it, I do remember a couple of those times where you're feeling tired and your feet are absolutely hurting, but you're waiting to see fireworks or something like that. But overall, I forget about those times, and it really is the memories, and it really is all of those great rides and great meet and greets and the overall great experiences. And now, as someone who lives close by, as an annual pass holder, I like being able to go and just do certain things and not have to do an entire day. On the vacation, I don't know if I necessarily felt like we were trying to squeeze everything absolutely in. I just think we were trying to make the most of our days and the most of our time. And I think as a vacationer who doesn't get to come all of the time, that may be the way you want to go. I think that's the way we wanted to go, and it really worked for us. And then when you're leaving, yes, you want to get back home. You're thinking about getting off your feet and some of those type of things. But then immediately you start to miss the parks. And you're like, wow, now I really want to go back. When can we go back next? And it sinks in and it hits you that, again, the incredible work that Disney has put into everything, the magic is there. The imagination is there, and they just create this great atmosphere where you can forget about the world, you can forget about your cares, and just really enjoy yourself.
That's an interesting way to state that, because I have had some vlogs that I have done recently where I've been in the parks where in real life, either I've gotten like some bad news or I've found out that somebody else has gotten some bad news, like one of my friends or something, or maybe I've gotten good news about something as well. Like I heard about a promotion when I was in Epcot one day. When you talk about being in Disney and having it be this escape from your worries and escape from your cares, while I have enjoyed every minute of being an annual pass holder, and I have so many great memories over the past 4 years of going to the parks on a random Tuesday, meeting up with a friend from Detroit or meeting up with a friend from Chicago or something, and having experiences that I never would have been able to have as a vacationer. I think the feeling I miss the most as a vacationer is that you are escaping the outside world when you're in the parks, because when you live here, when you drive on I-4 to get to the parks and then you leave and you have to drive on I-4 to get home, the real world feels a whole lot closer than it does when you fly into Orlando International Airport and take Magical Express, which still existed back in 2018, to your resort, and you're in that Disney bubble. When you're in that Disney bubble, you don't realize how close the outside world is to you. When you're staying at All-Star Movies, you don't realize just on the other end of those trees, there's a major tourist road. So that is definitely a vibe that I do kind of miss. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate what I've had over the past few years. I'm just saying it's a different feel, and I do miss that old feel every once in a while. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us for both of these episodes. I never realized it was going to turn into 2 episodes that would stretch all the way from the summer into the fall, but here we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time reminiscing about this vacation.
This has been episode 142 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. The next few weeks and months are going to bring a lot of fun videos and podcast episodes. I'll even have some big news eventually, so subscribing to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel would be a great idea to keep up to date on everything. We will have a brand new episode of the show next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.